The Caribbean Sea, once a symbol of tranquility and natural beauty, now finds itself at the heart of a growing storm. Its turquoise waters, which have long connected nations through trade and culture, are suddenly transformed into a tense and unpredictable battleground. Today, these waters are the stage for a dramatic military standoff between the United States and Venezuela, two nations locked in a contest of power and will. The world watches as their naval forces maneuver dangerously close, each side testing the other's resolve. Warships, bristling with advanced weaponry and cutting-edge technology, slice through the waves with purpose. The air is thick with tension, as every movement could be misinterpreted, every signal could be a provocation. This confrontation feels more perilous than any seen in the region for decades, raising fears of a sudden escalation. The scale of the military deployment is unprecedented, with fleets assembled in intimidating formations. Meanwhile, political leaders in Washington and Caracas exchange sharp words, their rhetoric growing more heated by the day, fueling uncertainty and anxiety across the region. For millions of ordinary people in Venezuela and neighboring countries, daily life is overshadowed by a sense of dread. Families gather around televisions, anxiously watching the news, wondering what tomorrow might bring. The uncertainty is palpable, stretching far beyond the borders of the two nations involved. Every maneuver, every statement is scrutinized by global leaders and analysts alike. Around the world, experts debate whether this is the prelude to a devastating conflict or a high-stakes game of brinkmanship where neither side wants to blink first. The United States insists its actions are necessary to protect regional stability and uphold international norms, presenting itself as a guardian of peace in the hemisphere. Venezuela, on the other hand, denounces the buildup as blatant imperialist aggression, rallying its people to stand firm against what it calls foreign interference and threats to its sovereignty. As the world holds its breath, the next moves in this high-stakes Caribbean chess match remain uncertain. The decisions made in the coming days could reshape not only the future of the region, but also the balance of power on the global stage. The U.S. has deployed a formidable carrier strike group, led by the USS George Washington, just north of Venezuela. Accompanied by cruisers, destroyers, and 2,500 Marines, this force projects overwhelming power. Officially, Operation Sentinel Freedom is about counter-narcotics and regional security, with multinational partners involved. The Pentagon insists the mission targets criminal networks, not Venezuela itself. Yet, the sheer scale of the deployment raises eyebrows. An aircraft carrier group is rarely used for drug interdiction. Critics argue the force is excessive for chasing smugglers, fueling speculation about deeper motives. The gap between the official narrative and the military reality is at the heart of the controversy. Is this about drugs or something much bigger? Venezuela's response has been swift and defiant. President Maduro denounces the U.S. deployment as a threat to sovereignty, rallying the nation with fiery speeches. Military parades in Caracas showcase tanks and missile systems, while troops mobilize along the coast and the Colombian border. Venezuelan naval patrols shadow the U.S. fleet, asserting control over their waters. Large-scale exercises, Bolivarian Shield 2025, simulate defense against foreign aggression. Diplomatically, Venezuela protests at the UN, accusing the U.S. of violating international law. State media amplifies messages of resistance and national pride. The government's strategy Project Strength deter intervention and unify the country. Venezuela stands on high alert, determined not to be intimidated. The seeds of today's crisis were sown in 2019, when the U.S. and allies recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as Venezuela's legitimate president. The move, following a disputed election, triggered harsh U.S. sanctions aimed at toppling Maduro. Sanctions targeted Venezuela's oil industry, freezing assets and isolating the regime. Maduro's government, with support from Russia, China, and Cuba, survived, blaming the U.S. for economic collapse and humanitarian crisis. Accusations flew. Washington charged Maduro with corruption and drug ties. Caracas accused the U.S. of sabotage and coup attempts. Years of mutual hostility have destroyed trust. The current military buildup is the culmination of this deep, unresolved conflict. Both sides now see each other as existential threats. Two clashing narratives drive the crisis, each with its own set of motivations and consequences. The U.S. claims its military presence is about stopping drug trafficking, citing Venezuela's alleged complicity. They argue that the flow of illegal narcotics from Venezuela poses a significant threat to American communities, necessitating a robust response. Critics argue this is a cover for regime change and control over Venezuela's vast oil reserves. They suggest that the U.S. has long been interested in Venezuela's oil wealth, and this military presence is a strategic move to gain influence over these resources. For Washington, the mission is law enforcement and democracy. For Caracas, it's imperialism and resource control. The U.S. insists on promoting democratic values, while Venezuela views these actions as a direct threat to its sovereignty. Maduro's government denies drug ties, framing the standoff as resistance to U.S. intervention. They portray themselves as defenders of national pride and independence, rallying their citizens against perceived foreign aggression. Both sides use these stories to rally domestic and international support. The U.S. seeks allies to back its anti-drug narrative, while Venezuela garners support by highlighting its struggle against external interference. The reality is complex. Drug trafficking is real, but so are strategic interests in oil and power. The intertwining of these issues creates a multifaceted crisis that is not easily resolved. The U.S. response far exceeds what's needed for anti-narcotics operations, suggesting deeper motives. The scale of military deployment indicates a broader agenda that goes beyond just stopping drug shipments. At stake is not just crime, but the future of Venezuela's government and resources. The outcome of this standoff could reshape the political and economic landscape of the region. The crisis is about far more than drugs. It encompasses issues of sovereignty, economic control, and the balance of power in the Western Hemisphere, making it a pivotal moment in international relations. The standoff in Venezuela reverberates across Latin America, sending shockwaves through neighboring countries and prompting urgent discussions among regional leaders. Nowhere is this more evident than in Colombia and Mexico, two nations with deep ties to both the United States and Venezuela, and with much at stake as tensions escalate. Colombia, sharing a long and often volatile border with Venezuela, finds itself on high alert. As a close U.S. ally, Colombia is under pressure to support Washington's stance, but it also recognizes the importance of maintaining stability along its frontier and avoiding a humanitarian crisis. The government in Bogotá is working to balance its security concerns with a renewed effort to restore diplomatic ties with Caracas, hoping to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. President Gustavo Petro faces a complex dilemma. Should he back the United States and risk being drawn into a regional conflict, or should he prioritize diplomacy and risk straining Colombia's relationship with its most powerful ally? Petro's administration is treading carefully, seeking to mediate and de-escalate, while also preparing for any potential fallout. Meanwhile, Mexico, under President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has taken a firm stance on non-intervention and dialogue. The Mexican government refuses to take sides, instead calling for calm and urging all parties to resolve their differences through peaceful negotiation. Mexico maintains open channels with the Maduro government and has offered to serve as a mediator, positioning itself as a neutral ground for talks. By doing so, Mexico hopes to prevent further escalation and demonstrate its commitment to regional peace and stability. The crisis in Venezuela has exposed deep divisions within Latin America over how best to respond. Some countries advocate for strong measures and international pressure, while others, like Mexico, emphasize dialogue and non-intervention. Colombia continues to walk a tightrope, balancing its security needs with diplomatic outreach, aware that any misstep could have serious consequences for the entire region. Mexico's persistent push for negotiation and mediation provides a crucial counterweight to calls for military action, offering hope for a peaceful resolution. Ultimately, the way Colombia and Mexico respond, and the choices they make in the coming days, could shape not only the outcome of the Venezuelan crisis, but also the future of regional cooperation and stability in Latin America. With so much firepower in close quarters, the risk of accidental escalation is dangerously high. A single misstep, a jet flying too close, a border skirmish, could trigger a wider conflict. Even a limited U.S. strike could provoke a fierce Venezuelan response, drawing in regional allies and causing chaos. The consequences: loss of life, a refugee crisis, and global economic shock. Yet overwhelming force can also deter rash moves, making both sides cautious. Washington may hope its show of strength pressures Maduro back to negotiations. Maduro, knowing he can't win a direct fight, aims to raise the cost of intervention. The question: Will either side miscalculate, or will they step back from the brink? As warships patrol, diplomacy intensifies at the United Nations. Venezuela demands Security Council action against the U.S. deployment, calling it a violation of sovereignty. The U.S. defends its operation as a response to transnational crime, using its veto to block condemnation. Regional groups like CELAC urge calm and a return to negotiations. Mexico and Brazil push for talks between Maduro's government and the opposition, hoping for a political solution. Progress depends on concessions. Sanctions relief from the U.S., democratic reforms from Venezuela. With trust in short supply, the world hopes words can avert war. This standoff is more than a regional dispute. It's a global flashpoint. Venezuela's oil reserves mean any conflict could send energy prices soaring, shaking the world economy. The crisis tests the international order, with Russia and China backing Maduro and the U.S. leading the opposition. A U.S. intervention risks a broader geopolitical clash. The humanitarian stakes are immense. Millions have already fled Venezuela, and war would trigger a new refugee wave. The stability of South America hangs in the balance. This is a test of diplomacy versus force, with consequences for millions. The world watches, hoping leaders choose peace over confrontation. The outcome will echo far beyond the Caribbean, shaping the future of global power and stability.